Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Awesome Wholesaler Experience Podcast, where we look into the many facets of the job, the career, and the lifestyle of investment and insurance product wholesaling. I'm your host, the creator of the Awesome Wholesaler Experience, and yours truly, Awesome Mike. Hey, everyone. Today's show is another special one, and we have a very special guest with us. Please allow me to introduce her to you. Michelle Joyce knows firsthand what it takes to run a successful professional speaking business. She understands the creative vision that professional speakers possess, as well as the expected outcomes of the decision makers and the seminar audiences. Now, as a proven, trusted industry professional, she helps corporations, associations, and bureaus to find the best keynote speakers for their events. Her coaching and consulting programs help professional speakers create stronger, more attractive brands and develop relevant seminar content and stories, polish their presentation skills, and generate more awareness for their products and services. Now, in 2015, Michelle was fueled by her passion for managing and coaching professional speakers to the point that she said, "That's it. I'm doing this myself," and she created Michelle Joyce Speakers. Now, with her unconditional love for the professional speaking industry, Michelle skillfully and effectively communicates and connects with audiences to their speakers, which results in a more memorable experience every time. For nearly 2 decades, though, prior to starting Michelle Joyce Speakers, Michelle reigned as the queen for the best-selling author, internationally recognized sales expert, but more importantly, a former guest and friend of the Awesome Wholesaler Experience Podcast, none other than himself, the king of sales, Mr. Jeffrey Gitomer. They say that behind every successful man is a good and awesome woman. That was Michelle. She was the queen of that company over there. Now, under her rule, Michelle and Jeffrey created one of the most successful professional speaking and training businesses in the country, selling thousands of customized and personalized seminars to companies and associations all over the globe. Michelle has been acknowledged in 5 business books for her input, ideas, and expertise, and her articles have appeared in a variety of the industry's top blogs and newsletters. But wait, there's more. Now, Michelle is a professional member of the National Speakers Association and the International Association of Speaker Bureaus, the IASB. Now, Michelle received her formal education, though, at Bowling Green State University, where she earned a baccalaureate degree, a BAc in interpersonal communication and marketing. Now, while at BGSU, Michelle also became a sister in the highly revered Alpha Xi Delta Sorority, but her highest claim to fame, and undoubtedly her biggest achievement while at school, was being crowned BGSU's, can you imagine it, homecoming queen in her junior year of college. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, she is the homecoming queen for real. Michelle and her husband, Neil, call North Carolina home, where they are active in their community. In fact, Michelle is even a Girl Scout troop leader, where they are raising their 2 young children, Connor and Caitlin, the heirs apparent to their family business. Welcome to the show, Michelle. Thanks for the cardiovascular workout on your intro. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Wow, you made me sound awesome.
We should just cut right there, right? Because it's all down here for me. No, you
Thank
did
you.
it. But I have to ask you, when did this queen thing start? Have you always been the queen?
Oh, I was always that kid that was involved in everything. Just, bless my parents. I was involved in everything. And that's sort of the prerequisite in college for the homecoming course is you're involved in a lot of student activities. But my husband would probably tell you I've always been queen. So we'll go with that.
Yeah, that's excellent. And by the way, he is just a handsome man of a man. So you guys are the royal family. Sure. Indeed.
I'll make sure that he knows you said that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not like creeping on him, but it was interesting when I was getting to know you a little bit. Now the Gitomer literally called you queen, though, like the queen of operations. I know this, and I knew this 10 years ago. So was that because you were the homecoming queen, or was that because of how you kind of take over and organize and execute like a queen does?
Well, I would say it was inspired by the fact that I was homecoming queen in college, and then sort of, that was my role for him. It was fun. When it first started, we did a team building exercise where we all helped to create each other's titles. One of the best team building exercises we did at Gitomer, we made superhero cards, and which is a company in itself. But Jeffrey turned it into a team building exercise where we sat around and we pulled out each other's strengths, and we created those titles. And that's when I was named Queen for Gitomer.
Wow. So,
which was so fun.
And it became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It sure did. Well, the fun part was that it was different. And so when clients would call in, they would ask for the queen. And so it just got to be really fun. And Jeffrey's the king of sales. So together we rolled.
You really did. In fact, you probably won't recall it, but I reached out to you, I would say 5 years ago. And I was so intimidated because of the title that you were the queen. And yeah, it was just like, wow. And then you're just such a sweet woman and such a giver with the troop leader. And then even in your, even in your writing, you can tell that your strongest emotional language indicator, I call them, is love. You really want to take care of people. And so it was kind of cool to do that. But I'm not going to make you angry, though, just in case. Off with his head.
Smart man.
Off with his head.
Smart man.
So you give credit to your parents, which is awesome. And they raised you, though, in Ohio. So
that's right.
I thought about starting off by just yelling, O-H.
I-O.
There you go. You didn't go to Ohio State, so, but I guess it's transferable. But tell us, when you were growing up, what was it like growing up in Ohio? And in particularly, who were your major kind of influencers that helped you to achieve the heights that you did, both currently and as you were coming up?
I grew up in a really small town called Wilmington, Ohio, which is sort of in between Dayton, Columbus, and Cincinnati. So as you can imagine, being in between all of those three cities, there's some cornfields and like a movie theater, and that's about it. And I got to tell you, it was the best place on earth to grow up. It was sort of this Norman Rockwell town that was full of Midwestern work ethic, and that's how I was raised. And I had the greatest parents who just encouraged me to do anything and everything. And so I was that kid that was involved in everything. I played sports year round. If there was a committee, I was on it. If there was some sort of extracurricular activity, I was involved. And my brother was the same way. I have a big brother who's a really important part of my life. And it was just a great place to grow up. And I look back and I realized all of those sort of small town lessons and work ethic that was instilled in me. And it's just such a big part of who I am today.
That's a great story. Now, I have a question for you, though. Being an entrepreneur is very lonely. And being that you were so active in all of these different activities, is it a challenge to be the queen, to be lonely? Or how do you balance that?
So I'm not lonely. I think, out of the gate, one of the first things that I learned as a small business owner and entrepreneur is you have to surround yourself with great people. So I stay social and I stay active in the community here. My husband and I are involved in a whole bunch of different things, and we have a great network of friends that we hang out with regularly. But I have a great team, that supports me, and they all work virtually, but we all make it a point to get together regularly as well. So I know sometimes it can feel like you're on an island as an entrepreneur and you've got your head down and you're working. And there are days where I don't think I leave the house. But I don't know that I feel lonely because I get to connect with people on a regular basis.
Yeah, maybe I misused the word lonely, but maybe alone. But I do know that there is some loneliness. You can't share too much success with the staff, or they all want a pay raise, and then you can't share the disappointment either, because then they start polishing their resume up, thinking this thing's going under, it's not going to make it. So I know the value of having a peer group to share. And a lot of the listeners on the show are what I call cowboys or cowgirls, where they're out there on the road. Every person they're talking to is they can be friendly, or even some of them are friends-ish, but they're by themselves, and they might have an internal partner or one or two staff people. So it is it's a healthy thing, I think, for you to stay social like you're doing there. And now your husband works with you, right? Is that full-time or is that a part-time?
So actually, he just decided last November to sort of resign from his position, and I've experienced some pretty significant growth in my business very quickly, and so it was sort of like, I need some help, and so he made the transition to come help me just a few months ago, and it's been great, and we have 2 little kids, so we are always busy, and he is, I always tell everyone, if I were to describe Neil, he's my rock, and he's the best partner in life that anyone could ask for. So I am very grateful. And I always joke that everyone needs a Neil.
Valentine's Day was last week, so there's no need to butter up now.
I just want to go on record. Yeah.
Got it. I love it. See, that's very smart, strategic. That's the queen.
Strategic.
Yeah, the queen is very strategic in her words. So you grew up, sounds like a core, kind of call it a American dream situation, and you worked in corporate, and you were extremely successful, and then you decided to chase the dream, the American dream, and you got into this professional speakers industry. What attracted you, to do that, and especially in that market? You mentioned that you have a unconditional love for that kind of a person, and what drives that?
Well, oh man, looking back, I would say that my love for professional speaking started in junior high when I was selected to just give a little presentation in front of the whole school. And I thought, well, sure, I'll stand up and do it. No big deal. I've always been really outgoing. Used to being in front of big crowds. I sang, I was a cheerleader. So it's like, that was nothing. And the principal of the school came up to me and he said, that was pretty good. Like, you could be like a press secretary someday. And in 7th grade, I had no idea what that was. But my aunt, who is a significant force in my life, and she's sort of the entrepreneur, sort of massaged that a little bit. And before I know it, in 7th and 8th grade, she's buying me books on public speaking and how to become an author. And so looking back, I always sort of had this knack for speaking. And out of college, I did a lot of it in college. That was sort of my major. It was interpersonal communication, and the major classes were presentations. That's what you did. And I moved to Charlotte right out of college, no job, brought 3 girlfriends with me, and we just wanted to start in Charlotte. And by the grace of God, I met with this recruiter who said, all right, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I don't really know that I have that figured out yet, but I love public speaking. I love it. And apparently a lot of people are afraid of it, and I'm not afraid of it. And she said, I have someone you need to meet. And that's how I met Jeffrey. And so I came to Gitomer right out of college, and just loved learning the industry. And at one point thought I wanted to be a speaker, but once I understood managing speakers and running the speaking business, I fell in love with that side of it. And so I was with him for 17 years, best place on the planet to learn the professional speaking industry as well as sales and customer service. And then decided that, at that stage in my life, we had a great team, and I knew that it was time for me to it was my time, to go out and do my own thing. So I created a company where I could offer both the speaker coaching as well as the speaker management. The speaker management has quickly grown. So that's our focus these days, is representing the country's best speakers.
So I envision you being a queen on the throne, and I see Jeffrey and Jay and the rest of these court gestures flopping around, trying to make people laugh. Am I getting the clear picture here? What's going on?
Yeah, it's, well, listen, people that know me know that I fight for two customers, right? I have the speaker and I have the end customer. And so I'm going to bat on a regular basis for both of them. And I could talk all day long about my speakers. My role on my roster is you have to be just as awesome off stage as you are on stage. So the cool part about owning your own business is you get to pick and choose who you work with. And I work with amazing people. I mean, these are just fantastic people. And they just happen to be really awesome speakers and subject matter experts, and they're darn good at what they do.
What's important about them being cool off stage as well to you?
You know, for me, it's being authentic in who you are, but also knowing the speaking industry the way I do. My meeting planner partners and my speaking bureau partners, they don't want to take a risk. You know, they work really hard to find the best speaker for that event. And there's a lot of work that goes into matching up all of those pieces. So the last thing that they want to do is put someone who's risky up on stage, or someone who's not a solid human being to the event crew. You know, you want someone who's trustworthy and reliable. And so that's why I say, you've got to be a good human before you're a good speaker.
That's well said. That is well said. A lot of people, you probably have dealt with some, and there's tons of stories about these celebrities that once you turn the switch on, they light up like a Christmas tree, but they are absolutely wretched people dealing with their own struggles and disastrous behavior off camera. So that is very interesting that you select that as a criteria for your speakers, so that your customer can trust that they're going to get a great product both when the person's on the stage as well as off the stage. Now, what would you say that a person that's doing a presentation, how can they become that? How can they go from being a strictly sales, person into this more of a public speaker type of a person? Are there some steps to transition there, or is it an either or kind of a scenario?
No, I think there's a lot of ability to transition. In fact, a lot of speakers in the industry start out really well known in their industry, so there might be someone who is in the automotive industry or the real estate industry, and for years they presented at their own sales meetings, or they presented at trade industry meetings, and then all of a sudden they thought, you know what, I have a great message here, and my message can be applicable to larger audiences or other people. And so a lot of times that's how speakers break into full-time professional speaking, is they may have done it as a trade for so many years and decided, I have a story to tell. I have a service to provide others. I have really great information that I can share.
That's awesome. Now, we're going to talk about how do you develop a person's story here in a moment, but just real easily, what do you think about status quo? And what I mean to really ask you is, let's go back to yesteryear and what it took to make someone successful 20 years ago or 15 years ago versus today. What do you think are there some major differences, and are there major mistakes that people are making now because they're marketing like it's 1995?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would tell you is that the industry today is way more competitive than it was 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago, when I started in the industry, professional speakers were sort of like this weird subculture where people would go, you can stand up and command $1 and get on stage and tell your story. But now anyone can be a speaker. Everyone can be a speaker. And so it's a little bit of a saturated market. And what you have to do is really differentiate from everyone else with your personal expertise and your story and your style and your personality and your credibility long before you decide to market that. So all of those things go hand in hand. I think to answer your question about transitioning, I think really focusing on what makes you different. What is your story? Because nobody can take away your story. We could all read a book and stand up and give a presentation on it, but that's not as compelling as someone who has a really unique story or a unique philosophy or things that have happened to them or things that they have caused. And that's what people want to hear. More importantly, when you tell that story, it's important to transfer it to the audience in a way that they can get it and they can understand it, because I'm never going to climb Mount Everest, right? That might be a really compelling story, but I'm never going to do that. But what I might do is take away lessons from that. Or I want to know on your hardest days, what kept you going? So you have to make sure that you bring that message in a way that just anybody can get it and then walk away and implement it into their own businesses.
You are a master at this. Let me put you to the test a little bit. So let's just say that I'm a boring guy, went to this boring school, got a boring business degree, and now I somehow find myself representing this boring product. And there are 5 to 7 little features and benefits, but really there's 100 products that look just like mine. Yeah. What would you tell someone that's like that? How can they develop their differentiation?
Sure. So I would, number one, look at why you're selling that product or service. It's got to be something that you believe in. And if you believe in that, focus on the why and focus on the value that it brings to the customer. So in sales, when I'm booking events for my speakers, it's not about me. It's not about the speaker. It's about the people in the audience. And so that's what I have to speak to. My speakers are going to get on stage and they're going to crush it every time because they're awesome and they're professional and they're experienced. But that's not just why people want to hire them. That's sort of just that's an expectation everyone should have of a professional speaker these days. What's more important is, how will the audience be different? How will the audience be affected? So it's the same in sales. It's the same in customer service. What can you do to better the customer with the product and the service that you're selling?
That's awesome. And that it's right in line with a drum that I've been beating lately is, customer service is kind of expected. And what does customer service really do? It saves the customer time and it saves them money, right? So that's great. That's great. But it's almost to be expected. To kind of go to the next level, though, is it's about an experience. So if you go to see a rock concert, it's not just about hearing the music, but it's about the experience of being there and all of this. And now what you're talking about, and I think you mentioned it actually, the word is transformation or transforming, so that audience person, the person that they leave the presentation is different than the person that walked into the presentation. They've had some kind of event happen to them where they're now different. Developing that story is the challenge. And I think that's really what sets the awesome speakers apart from the normal ones. I've heard the phrase called the hero's journey. And this is what every movie is kind of based on. Things started, it was great. You grew up in a little town, and then the darkness came in and the problems happened. And then you had to struggle and grind it, and then you figure out a way to solve the problem. And you solve the problem and you save the world. And now you can save the world too by buying my course or buying my thing, whatever that is. That's the hero's journey. You've heard of that, I'm sure.
Right.
What is your opinion of that? Is that still relevant, or is that 1995 presentation skills?
Oh man, I really think it varies. I think there are definitely some inspiring stories out there, and there are stories that people will continue to want to hear always. And I think it's not just because it's a great story, but it's just a good reminder. And sometimes these are stories and lessons where you and I go, yeah, I know that. Okay. I know that. Okay. But it's a good reminder, because maybe that story is hitting you at a time in your life where you lost track of that mindset, or you lost track of that attitude. You talked about customer experience. I will share with you that is probably the number one topic request we are seeing right now from meeting planners and events. People want to talk more about the entire experience. Like, how can we engage our customers on every aspect, from sales and marketing to customer service? But what's the overall experience? And so much so that our entire blog in January of this year was devoted to that topic. It's so important for everybody. And I think that's sort of, that's next level. If you are a speaker and you've been known for sales, you need to think beyond that, and you need to start thinking about the more of a holistic approach on what a customer will experience working with you.
Yeah, that's very well said. In fact, you to quote the blogs you're talking about, first one that I'll quote was to create a memorable experience at your next event. 4 points: provide nourishment, and you mean literally, like give them some food, right?
Yep.
Not just metaphorically. Deliver a unique experience, have fun, and show them that you care.
Yep.
I know you wrote that. I
I
know you personally wrote that, because that is
I did.
your language. Yes, show them you care. That's the love part. Have fun. That's love. Deliver a unique experience. That's provide nourishment. That's love. That's a wonderful thing. That experience is the life is heir to a business today. And let me tell you a little experience that I just had, where a previous customer, not one of mine, that I inherited, called in wanting some information about a product that they had essentially recommended that their client purchased. And the experience that I was forced to give to them was, here is an 800 number for you to call. And it literally embarrassed me. And the only thing that I could do was to be on the line with the person when they call, which I was even instructed not to do. But that experience, that is a death sentence. That's a nail in the coffin, if you ask me, for a company to do that. Is there a chance remotely that person will ever do business with anything aligned with that? Why would they? There's so many opportunities out there, so many different options. That's a terrible experience, and it's difficult to overcome that kind of a negative experience, especially when customer service is expected. Second one I'll talk to you about, though, you mentioned that creativity is the #1 skill. Yes, that companies need in 2019. You need to be open to new ideas, seek a new perspective, be willing to change what you've always done or the way you've always done it, and dare to be different to find new solutions. Michelle Joyce, tell us, please. Give us an idea of some neat things we can do to dare to be different as a professional speaker.
Sure. Well, the first thing, so let's go back to, you talked about the death sentence that you had, right? Like how could you possibly turn that into a customer experience? And one might argue that you can't, or there's going to be an experience, good or bad, either way, right? So the cool part is that it's up to you. It's up to you to decide, is that experience a good one or a bad one? Oftentimes, if you're in a situation where you might not feel you can differentiate with the product or service you can provide, you can differentiate with the conversations you have, right? So that might be the only solution that you could offer at the time, but you might do it in a really friendly, warm, loving way that the person wasn't expecting. And that is a differentiator. So I would encourage people to think about things like that. You know, how can you be different? How can you take the time to engage with people so that you're memorable? All my clients will tell you that, you know, we're talking about each other on a sales call long before we're talking about the products and services that I can help them with. So long before I'm talking about my speaker, I want to know where people grew up and what they're doing today and how's the weather and where they're doing. And it creates this personal connection. And I think when you create those personal connections, you become kind of friendly, and then that's memorable. And what I have found is that, you know, I make it my job to become friends with everyone I do business with. And that's memorable. To answer your second question about creativity, for me, that's just mindset. You know, and I love that. So the brilliant people at LinkedIn, the article that you're referencing, they took all this exclusive data and they said, okay, what are the skills that your company needs most in 2019? And creativity ranked #1. And I think in a time that we're living where consumers are different, they are more educated, there's a whole new generation out there that buys differently, that people that you and I did. You know, I'm like the most brand loyal person in the world, but the generation coming up, they're not. It's gone away. They do things differently. They think differently. And so you have to be creative in your process. You have to be able to be resourceful. You have to be able to problem solve. And you have to be able to position your products and services in new ways to really differentiate.
For instance, Mark Schaefer.
Yeah.
One of your guys, one of the heavy hitters at Michelle Joyce Speakers. He was quoted in an article that you had commented about Fortnite.
Yes.
Okay, Michelle, Fortnite is taking over the planet.
Yep.
Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How can we as professional speakers be more like Fortnite in the good respect? And I can get the dance in here, but the whole thing. But it's an interesting, kind of a different approach on sales and marketing and building a community. What do you think about that? What are some things we could take away and maybe implement from Fortnite?
Well, first of all, I should share with you that I have an 11-year-old son. So I am well versed in Fortnite, even if I don't want to be. The first time I ever sat down with him, I was like, okay, show me what it's about. And you can team up with people and go on a mission, and then you can stop and dance, or you can stop and kick a soccer ball. And I was like, my Pac-Man days are so far in the past. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. But the article you're talking about with Mark is that, basically what he said is, look at what they've done. They have created this massive following by being different, what we just talked about. And essentially it's free. I mean, you don't have to pay a lot of money to play Fortnite. You can just log on, and it's interactive. So, Connor plays with his friends. So on a rainy day when they can't get outside, they're on headsets and they're engaging and they're talking and they're working together as a team. And, we limit technology in our house because I think that's important. But my mom, who was an educator her entire life, was over one day and said, that's amazing. That's an amazing opportunity that those kids, who live across town can be playing together. And so for her, it was an entirely different perception. But man, the following that they've created is about being different. It's talkable, and Mark Schaefer just wrote a book called Marketing Rebellion, The Most Human Company Wins. Jay Baer on our team wrote Talk Triggers, which is about operational differences within companies that create word of mouth. And that's just where the future's going. You have to recognize what your customers want, and you have to be different.
I agree completely. And, I think one of the magical pillars of Fortnite and other successful companies nowadays, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it might be socially, they're building these communities. And you don't have to be geographically bound, because of the internet. There is no more geographic boundaries.
Right.
This show will be broadcast around the world, and we will get comments from my friends from Europe, the UK, the Netherlands, Canada, the US, of course, all the way to Sydney, Australia, because these are my friends, and we are a part of a global community. And I think that professional speakers can be the magnet. And what you're doing is you're allowing these professional speakers to bridge the gaps that geography in the past would have caused. I have a couple of little surface level things. You want to be different and all that, but what are your feelings? And you mentioned that it's more competitive today than it has been ever. What about dress and grooming? There was a time where it was navy blue suit, white shirt, red tie, none of this stuff, none of this facial hair would work. And I'd have a toupee on for sure. Right. So what are your feelings on that? Is it really okay to not look so corporate anymore, or is that even becoming normal?
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons I would ever teach a speaker is know your audience. So I think there is definitely a place for someone to wear a suit and tie, or for a woman to wear a suit, if that's what the audience demands. So a lot of higher level executive retreats or a lot of professional services industries still might require that. And so as a speaker, you have to know that going in, unless you have something that you would wear no matter what, because that's part of your brand, so that would be the exception. But I also think, it's a different environment right now. It's a different world. It is a lot more casual. It is a lot more of smaller entrepreneurial type businesses or small businesses, and they're focused more on the holistic culture of the people. I mean, Google did that for us, right? Like Google changed the way that we looked at people working together in a community. So I think the biggest lesson is just know your audience. If you need to wear a suit on stage, wear a suit. If they would prefer that you don't, then don't. But those are all questions that go into the element of customizing your presentation. It goes that far.
That's wonderful. One layer deeper, you mentioned there's more competitive, and I'm going to assume that it's happened over the last 20 years, but it seems like today there are a lot more women than there were 20 years ago in the called professional speaking and sales business. Obviously there's a line that's there between appropriate and inappropriate, but what is your take on using maybe an unfair advantage, using your beauty or sex appeal to gain an advantage if you're an attractive woman?
So it's an interesting question. I would share with you that even though more women are coming into this industry, there's still a terrific need for more women. It's still more of a male-dominated industry. So I would love to see more women step up and share their messages. And I got to tell you, I'm on the front line booking events every day, and I'm hearing the needs from meeting planners and VPs of marketing and CEOs who want to bring subject matter experts in. I've never had someone say, we want so-and-so because they're pretty, ever. I mean, I've just never heard it. They want people who are credible on a topic. They want people who, like we said earlier, are just as awesome off stage as they are on stage, because they don't want that risk. They're easy to work with. But more importantly, today, it's not just about the message they deliver. It is very much so about that customer experience for the audience. So someone who's going to bring personality and customized stories and research and entertainment to the stage is in a much better position to win than someone who, just is really good at speaking or has a great story. So when I say the market is competitive, that's what I mean. Like you have to bring, the days of just having a great story and just being a good speaker are done. You have to bring the entire experience with you.
That's awesome. I'm sure that you've seen some, well, let's just call it disasters in your career. Can you tell us a couple of mistakes that happened? And we'd love to share in a story if you can pull one or two off the shelf. But what are some of the things that you see that speakers really just do wrong?
The first thing that comes to my mind is I witnessed a speaker who was so focused on memorizing their presentation that they lost their place. And it was painful. And your heart just breaks because you're like, oh gosh, I hate that for you. But and I should clarify, this is never one of my speakers, right? Because they're fantastic. But it was at an industry event, and this person took the stage, and she lost her place, and she got off, and she could never recover. And the lesson there for people who deliver presentations on a regular basis is that don't memorize your content, own your content. So if you own your content and you live your content, you don't have to memorize a line. It'll just come. Now, what that means is that doesn't mean don't rehearse and don't practice. So, I just don't be so focused on the next line. Be focused on what's the message for the audience. Because people will throw out a question, or people, there could be a fire drill. Literally, one of my speakers had a fire drill in the middle of her presentation, and you just have to regroup and you have to get back on track. But if you know your stuff and you know how it's responding, or how the audience is responding, then that's more important. A couple of other things might be, one time, one of my speakers was fully prepared for an audience, And at the very last minute, the meeting planner said, oh, by the way, we also have another group. I know you didn't talk to them on your pre-event call, but this audience is actually 50% this group and 50% this group. And the speaker was like, okay, good to know. And so, when you're a professional and you do this full time, you have to be prepared for the unexpected. And he nailed it. And what he did is he had all of these real world experience examples for the one group that he prepared for, not knowing that the other group was going to be there. But the transition was flawless. He would say, now this is what it looks like for this group. This might be what it looks like for this group. And so you would have never known that he wasn't fully prepared for both. And that is the sign of a true professional.
That's, appreciate those stories. It is, and I've seen it in my own performance. When I believe, it's easy for me to be believed. If I'm trying to quote some stats or something that I've been just given that I don't actually, embrace and breathe and haven't sold myself on, that's dangerous. You can get lost in the numbers and the details. And, but when I'm talking about, the 5 emotional language indicators, or my pyramid of power and persuasion, or my activity matrix, those are things that I am, that they have become a part of me. So you can wake me up in the middle of the night and say, hey, tell me about the 5 emotional language indicators, and boom, it's right there. So I appreciate that. And I think you're right. If we as speakers and wholesalers and financial advisors can tell the story that is real to us instead of just telling a story, I think it really comes through. Michelle Joyce Speakers is it's not a baby company anymore. A lot of companies fail in their first year, maybe second year. You're I want to say you're killing it, because that's kind of graphic, but you're doing very well. And
you can say it. You can say it.
Your team is growing. Both your speaker cadre are growing, as well as the staff members are growing. So as you see things changing, as you see the economy and the industry continue to evolve, where do you see, or what are your plans? What are your plans for Michelle Joyce Speakers for the next 5 or 10 years? Where are you going?
That's a great question. It's the question of the day, and I don't know that I have those answers. We provide such a fantastic service through our speakers for our partners that I don't have a desire to get too big, so we pride ourselves on the personal relationships that we deliver on a regular basis and the service that we provide. In fact, I had a lot of speakers reached out to me over the past couple of years and said, I want to come on your roster. How do I do this? And I thought, you know what? I would love to have you, but I'm at this sort of capacity where I'm not able to bring anyone on right now, or the service that I deliver for everyone will diminish. And that's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, that I knew, would it make good business sense to bring people on? Sure. But I built this business on the relationships that I made, and I'm incredibly protective of those relationships. And so what I started to think about was, okay, how can I bring on another me? How can I bring on another someone so that we could expand the roster, but that I could maintain the level of service that I provide? And that's when I invited the fantastic Jennifer Lear to join my team last year. And so she came on end of last year, and she's got 2 speakers under her, and we're about to onboard 3 more. So that's really exciting. But I don't know that I want to, have 50 speakers. We have a boutique offering of speakers. And I think everyone can say, oh, Michelle Joyce Speakers, I know exactly who she has on her team. And I think there's something to be said for that.
That's awesome. That is terrific. You've got this little happy place that you're in, and I don't mean little and demeaning at all, but it is, and it's remarkable that you're wise enough to see that and to value that. And as your little ones are growing, it's a great environment, I'm sure, that you're creating for them to grow into. And who knows, when they're ready to to head up to BGSU for their baccalaureate degree or whatever, maybe you could reapproach it there. I know that Jennifer is on the West Coast, so you've got an East Coast and West Coast presence. maybe you could put somebody in Chicago or something, and
Yeah.
continue to take over the world in that regard. But all right, so let's shift gears here, and we're coming up on an hour here, and I like to kind of respect everyone's time. Let's shift gears. I have two signature questions, Michelle, and they're no big deal really, but every guest kind of answers them in their own unique way. So you know who my former guests have been, so you're in a little bit of steep competition here. So let's see how
Yeah.
all right, ready? Are you ready? Here we go. Question number one. You pick up the phone, and on the other end of the phone is 25-year-old Michelle Joyce, or maybe Michelle Gerard at that time, right? What advice?
Joyce said 25. Yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self now?
Two things come to mind. One is learn to not be so emotional. One of the best lessons Jeffrey Gitomer ever taught me was, he said, take things seriously, don't take them personally. And when you're young and you want to please everyone and you're growing and it's your earning years, right? Like it's your first job and you want to make sure you're doing everything right. It's hard. It's hard not to take things personally and let your emotions get in the way. So that was a lesson I learned over time. I wish I could have shortened that curve. So I would tell the 25-year-old Michelle Joyce to do that. And the second thing would be to don't forget to make time for yourself. And I think every entrepreneur and small business owner can relate to that. We work so hard to build our brand and build our relationships and serve our customers and serve our family and serve our kids and serve our community that oftentimes, for me personally, I'm last on the list. And that is something that I'm working on. And I would sort of tell me 20 years ago, make that more of a priority.
You did not disappoint. Those were great answers. Those were terrific answers. I wonder if you could hear it when you were 25. That's the challenge that I always am faced with.
I don't know. I don't know. You can only hope, right? Like, yeah, I'm feeding lessons to my kids now where I wonder that same thing. And I think they get a portion of it, and that's all you can hope for.
You've heard that, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So you're supposed to listen more and talk less. But per square inch, my mouth is a lot bigger. The hole in my mouth is bigger than my ears. It's not a fair competition.
It's not a fair fight.
No. So question number 2, and this one's a little more fun. Michelle Joyce, if you could have any superpower, which would you choose and what would you do with it?
Oh, that's so easy for me. My superpower would be to pause everything, but allow me to keep going. And my weakness has always been 24-hour days. That's my biggest weakness. So I have always said, if I could just pause everything and let me get a whole bunch of stuff done, and then everyone, I have this vision of everyone just freezing, and then me catching up and getting all my stuff done, and then everyone just goes right back to where they were. That, man, I would love that. Just want to put a big old pause button in.
I think you are on the podium. I think you just took over the I think you're the queen of the podium for answering my signature questions. Those were amazing.
Yay!
Those were unprepared too. Unprepared. I didn't.
That's right.
That was
That's
excellent. Right. I've had some people really struggle to where I said, "Hey, just nudge me when you're ready to continue," because they were stumped. It's kind of like I had to edit out, 2 minutes of silence. That I felt terrible for them, but you did terrific on those. I appreciate that.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah, you don't. You never cease. You cease to impress me. You cease. Whatever it is, you're impressive. Never cease to impress me. That's what it is. Okay. So with that, if they want to contact you to hire one of your speakers, it's real easy. Everyone, it's michellejoyce.com. I think even Michelle Joyce Speakers, but I just pull up Michelle Joyce,
Yep.
MichellJoyce.com. And you can take a look at her stable of terrific speakers. And if you have a need or a desire or would like to have them come and speak at your presentations, whether it's a small broker dealer meeting or a major conference, that's what they do. Real quick though, Michelle, before we wrap, I want to thank you personally. I have been a benefactor of your work through the many years where I've been a fan of the Gitomer show. And then I want to thank you now too, because you're inspiring to people, you're inspiring to me, and you give me the courage to go for my dreams in the realm of public speaking and the such. So thank you for that. I'm sure that I can speak for everyone that's out there that also says thank you, and to tell you that we do appreciate you and your work. We wish you much fortune and success both now and in the future. And as we say on the Awesome Wholesaler Experience, pardon me, it's about the journey. And we do wish you well on yours. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Oh,
Wholesalers,
thank you for having me.
it's been our pleasure. My pleasure, especially. Wholesalers, thanks for listening. And of course, if you'd like to support the show, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And like Jeffrey said, go ahead and share the episode. In fact, tell both of your friends. Seriously, though, if you want to support the show and it's not too much trouble, would it be too much to ask for a rating or review of the show? It really does help. In the meantime, though, thanks for listening and for watching. Thanks for listening and watching. Watching, it's a new word. And thanks for supporting the show. And of course, thanks for being awesome. Good night, everybody.